ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, 2020 in hindsight. As the new year dawns in just a few hours, we take a look back at the most significant happenings of the past year. All hands on board. Army Commander General Shavindra Silva calls for the public support to drive the country's development and progress.
I will discharge the duties in the capacity of Commander of the Army in year 2021 and I will drive the tri-forces to the victory of the motherland.
Two choices. The Foreign Secretary responds to repatriate quarantine payment claims.
They have two choices. One is to go to the government quarantine center or go to a hotel quarantine. Because you have to pay, and also the PCR test you have to pay.
Friends indeed. The Chinese ambassador promises enhanced cooperation in the coming year.
China-Sri Lanka friendship are facing huge opportunities. I'm looking forward to strengthening strategic communication, expanding practical cooperation.
All this and much more coming up on this Thursday, the 31st of December, 2020.
Nava sunlight sakura. Then dikukal pavathina sakura mal suwandin.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I am Shanella Fernando. Now, 2020 has been a life-altering year in many ways. The entire world was forced to endure many challenges, most of which were due to an unfettered virus that grew into a global pandemic. With only a few hours left for the dawn of the brand new year, we now take a quick recap of the notable events of 2020. On the 3rd of January, the 4th session of the 8th Parliament was ceremonially declared open under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. On the 27th of the same month, Sri Lanka detected the first COVID-19 case within its borders after a Chinese national tested positive for the virus. With the spread of the virus accelerating in Wuhan, China, a group of Sri Lankan students stranded in the city were brought back home on the 1st of February. They landed at the Mattala Rajapaksa International Airport after a successful mission by Sri Lankan Airlines. Meanwhile, the first COVID-19 infected Sri Lankan, a chauffeur tourist guide, was confirmed in the country on March 11th. Considering the risk posed by the coronavirus, a nationwide police curfew was imposed on the 20th of March, completely closing down the country for nearly 3 months. On March 28th, Sri Lanka reported its first COVID-19 related death of a 60-year-old resident of Maravilla with underlying health conditions. Although under normal circumstances, the Sinhala and Tamil New Year and Vesak Poya brings people together, this year for the first time in Sri Lanka's history, the festivals were celebrated in isolation. The country went into polls on the 5th of August to elect 225 members for the 9th Parliament of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. Following the release of the preferential vote results on the 7th of August, the candidate with the highest votes turned out to be Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who shattered the previous record held by UNP leader Ranil Wickremesinghe. The UNP, the country's oldest and most prominent political party, faced its biggest defeat in its 74-year history with a shocking exit of the party's long-serving leader, Ranil Wickremesinghe. With that, on the 9th of August, Mahinda Rajapaksa took oath as the Prime Minister of the newly elected 9th Parliament of Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, on the 20th of September, tragedy hit the central hills of Sri Lanka when a 5-story building collapsed in Kandy, killing a family of 3. On the 4th of October, Sri Lanka was struck with the second wave of COVID-19 after successfully responding to the first in March. The 20th Amendment Draft Bill was passed in Parliament on the 22nd of October with a 2/3 majority.
Safeguard hand sanitizer. Navatama nishpadana pela. Nirogimat diviyakata.
Army Commander General Shavendra Silva today called on the public to lend their fullest support to the country's drive towards development and prosperity. The Army Commander made the statement after a special Guard of Honour parade by the Gajaba Regiment to commemorate his recent elevation to 4-star General.
Chief of Defence Staff and Army Commander General Shavendra Silva was accorded a Guard of Honour parade by the Gajaba Regiment today to honour his recent elevation to 4-star General of the Army. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa promoted both the current Army Commander and Defence Secretary retired Major General Kamal Gunaratne to the General's rank on December 28th. The ceremony started off with the Army Commander's motorcade arriving at the Army headquarters, where he was greeted by a Guard turnout salute and welcomed by Colonel Indika Perera, the commanding officer of the headquarters battalion. The Army Commander was then invited to review the Guard of Honour parade, presented by 2 officers and 48 other ranks of the Gajaba Regiment. In his speech, the Army Commander paid tribute to the country's military heroes and called for the public's full support for the country's drive towards progress and security.
I have been enriched in so many ways during my military career. First, my commanding officer happened to be the great General Vijay Vimal Ratna. I was highly motivated by his leadership and charisma and surely wanted to be someone like him one day. Second, I climbed up the ladder with the mentorship of great senior officers of this army and with their acceptance. Third, I started the battlefield with dauntless men and subordinates who dared and sacrificed even the life for the motherland. Fourth, I have been recognized as a leader rather than a commander by the subordinates, and they supported me to undertake any task assigned to the army. Fifth, and the most importantly, the new capacity places me in right and very comfortable position in continuing to serve this great army and the motherland in this critical time. I pay my heartfelt tribute to those brave men who made the supreme sacrifice of their life in achieving the goals and targets assigned to them in the noble cause of giving a better tomorrow for our country and its people. I salute them and insist in this day that their sacrifice is not forgotten and never ever forgotten. I pray speedy recovery for officers and the men who rendered the great service at the expense of their limbs, organs, or eyes. And I ensure that their well-being will be looked after until the rest of their lives. I waded in my career through many challenges, yet I always discharged my duty with sacrifice, where I have never sought for personal comfort at the expense of duty and obligations. Most importantly, I have never compromised my integrity. I have always accomplished the organizational objectives and the organizational goals assigned to me. I think that made me to come to the position where I am today. I will discharge the duties in the capacity of Chief of Defence Staff and especially as the Commander of the Army in year 2021 too. And I will drive the tri-forces to the victory and nothing but the victory of the motherland of Sri Lanka. I wish health, wealth and good luck for all your future endeavours with the sincere hope of receiving your fullest cooperation and support for the noble cause of thriving the mother Sri Lanka towards security and prosperity.
Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Kizan Hong, offered New Year wishes to the government and people of Sri Lanka today in what he termed the challenging times of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ambassador Key stated that the Chinese government looks forward to strengthening Sino-Sri Lankan ties even further in the coming year with increased cooperation in the country's economic recovery, development and poverty alleviation within a vision for a shared future for mankind.
2020 has witnessed the sudden onslaught of COVID-19. Those risks and challenges facing us are unprecedented. China and Sri Lanka as good neighbors, good friends, and good partners have stood together and extended each other's helping hand in fighting against COVID-19. This has once again proved a friend in need is a friend indeed. When Sri Lanka was struck by the first wave of COVID-19 outbreak, our government, companies, and people immediately provided numerous medical supplies and financial assistance. We are continuing helping our Sri Lanka friends by our best. Over the past year, China and Sri Lanka have maintained close high-level exchanges and enhanced mutual political trust, guided by the important consensus reached by our leaders. We join hands to respond to the challenging international and regional situation. We promote the alignment of Belt and Road Initiative together with the vistas of prosperity and splendor. We witness mega projects such as Colombo Port City and Hambantota Port having achieved substantial progress with the International Financial Center and the Ceylon Tire Manufacturing Company. We are also expecting the grand projects such as National Kidney Disease Hospital in Polong Laruwa and the Joint Research Center for Water Technology in the University of Perodania to be completed. All of this will bring more and more capitals, jobs, and tax revenues to Sri Lanka and contribute to the economic recovery, substantial development, and poverty alleviation of Sri Lanka. We are together building a global community of health and a community with shared future for mankind. China-Sri Lanka friendship and cooperation are facing huge opportunities. As the ambassador of China to Sri Lanka, I'm looking forward to working with you to contribute strengthening strategic communication, expanding practical cooperation, and jointly bring China-Sri Lanka relations to a high level. To conclude, I sincerely wish you and your family healthy and prosperous New Year of 2021.
President of Egypt Abdel Fattah al-Sisi extended his best wishes to greetings to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the people of Sri Lanka for the new year 2021 and reaffirmed the cordial relationship that has always existed between the two nations. In his message, President al-Sisi expressed his sincere hopes that the new year will usher in a new chapter where the ambitions and aspirations of both countries come true through the harnessing of efforts to surmount global challenges and realize a future of peace and prosperity for all. The Egyptian president stated that he is hopeful that 2021 will witness further expansion of bilateral ties in the spirit of friendship and cooperation that has marked the decades-long relations of both countries to the mutual benefit of their people. Egypt was the first Arab and African country to establish diplomatic relations with Sri Lanka in 1957. More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
Welcome back. In more news, the police have urged the public to limit New Year gatherings this time to family members only as the virus risk still remains high. In the meantime, Chief Epidemiologist Dr. Sudat Samaravira says that the pandemic can be eradicated from Sri Lanka in the new year with the collective effort of the government and the public.
The COVID-19 death toll in Sri Lanka increased to 204, with 4 fatalities that occurred last evening and with 5 more reported today. The victims included 5 residents from the Colombo district and a single victim each from Batiklo, Kalutara, Ratnapura and Matale districts. During the course of yesterday, 639 infections were found in 20 districts, with Gampa surpassing Colombo by recording the highest number of infections of 190. The infections detected in Gampa include 47 from Pugoda, 21 from Nittambua, 15 from Biagamam, 14 from Kahovita, 9 from Kalania, and 8 infections each from Wattala and Veyangoda. Out of the 133 infections detected in Colombo, 11 were found in Mattakulya, 10 from Kesalvatta, 6 from Kolpeti, and 4 infections from Grand Pass. The infections in Colombo also include 83 cases found at a garment factory in Sitavaka. Other than Colombo and Gampa, 89 infections were reported from Kandy, 50 from Kalutara, 42 from Ampara, 27 from Ratnapura, 21 from Jaffna, 19 from Kegol and 18 from Kurunagala yesterday. In addition, 10 infections from Galle, 9 from Matara, 8 from Batiklo, 5 from Matale, 4 from Trincomalee and 3 from Hambantota were also confirmed. Further 2 infections each were reported from Badulla, Puttalam, Monaragalam, with a single infection each from Mulathu and Nuwara yesterday as well. In the meantime, 1,215 rapid antigen tests were conducted in the Batiklo district yesterday. During testing, health authorities detected 59 COVID-19 infections with 50 found in the Kathankudi Divisional Secretariat Division. Following this, steps were taken to isolate the Kathankudi Divisional Secretariat area with immediate effect. Meanwhile, 5 COVID-19 infected prison inmates who were being treated at the Galevela Treatment Centre in Polonnaruwa have escaped during the early hours of the day. The escapees are inmates of the Nigambu prison aged 26, 27, 31, 36 and 52 and have been identified as drug addicts. One escapee was recaptured in the Kakapalia area in Chilau by the area's public health inspectors. Afterwards, the inmate was handed over to the prison's officers for treatment. In another development, a total of 940 people were subjected to rapid antigen testing at several exit points of the Western Province yesterday, with 16 travellers found positive for COVID-19. So far, 90 infections have been found through rapid antigen testing that have begun from the 18th of this month at Western Province exit points. In more news, police media spokesperson DIG Ajit Rohana urged public this morning to limit all New Year celebrations to family members only.
අද රාත්‍රියේ සාද සැනකෙලි උත්සව මේ සියල්ල ඔබේ පවුලේ අයට විතරක් සීමා කරමින් සිදු කරන්න කිසිම අවස්ථාවක කණ්ඩායම් හැටියට සමූහයක් හැටියට හැසිරෙමින් සාද පවත්වන්නට එපා.
Meanwhile, Chief Epidemiologist Dr. Sudat Samaraveera says that COVID-19 can be eradicated from the country in 2021 with the collective efforts of the public and government.
Tomorrow will be a new year, but we should keep in mind that we are starting this new year with COVID-19, but with good dedication of the people and also with the support to the government control efforts. I believe that during the 2021 we will be able to control COVID-19 very successfully within a very short period of time, again giving way to normal life.
In other developments, the total number of COVID-19 recoveries in Sri Lanka increased to 35,329, with 706 more patients recovering and being discharged from hospitals during the day. With that, the total number of active cases in the country now stand at 7,766.
Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jainath Kolambage says that the country conducts repatriation process by offering returnees the option of undergoing quarantine at a government facility or at a hotel cost. The Foreign Secretary said that complaints made by some of the repatriates of having been forced to pay to undergo quarantine at hotels is false, as it is up to the returnees to opt for a quarantine procedure of their choice. In the meantime, 3 more Ukrainian tourists who arrived in the country were confirmed to be infected with the COVID-19 virus today.
As Sri Lanka's repatriation efforts continue to take place, claims have been made by Sri Lankan returnees over the need to pay in order to undergo quarantine. However, Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jainath Kolambage said that these claims are unjustified, as selecting the method of quarantine is solely at the discretion of the returnee. The Foreign Secretary stated that returnees are given a choice of either undergoing quarantine at a government facility or a hotel for which the cost has to be borne by the returnee.
We work 2 different procedures for bringing Sri Lankans. One is that through our diplomatic missions, high commissions and the consulates, we collect the names of people who are wanting to come. According to a priority list, we prioritize them and then we tell the airline to issue the tickets. People coming like that, they have 2 choices. One is to go to the government quarantine center. If you select that, the 2 tests are totally free and the government quarantine is totally free. So we have catered another category, that is if somebody wants to pay little extra money and stay in a 5-star or a 4-star hotel for a period of 14 days with all the meals, that also we provide. So we categorically tell the people before they board the aircraft that the choices they have either to go to the government quarantine or go to a hotel quarantine. Hotel quarantine, of course, you have to pay, and also the PCR test you have have to pay. We have catered both these facilities because some people don't like to go to a common quarantine center, because in the common quarantine centers we don't have individual rooms or individual facilities. These are common facilities. So some people now, when they arrive here, they start complaining that we have to pay the money. Why do we have to pay? Well, it's an individual choice they make before they come. They know that they have to pay for hotel quarantine. They know that they will have to incur this expenditure. So it is not that we force anyone to select the hotel path. It is basically that choice made by the individual who is traveling to Sri Lanka. And our main focus during the last few months has been the Middle East. And as of now, we have brought about 27,000 people from the Middle East alone, because that is where the largest number of Sri Lankans are working. And we found that they were losing jobs, they were losing places to stay. And therefore, we have arranged special repatriation flights to and from Middle East. And during the next 10 days also, we will continue to bring in more and more people, especially from the Middle Eastern region, because that is where the largest number of Sri Lankans are working.
Meanwhile, following the commencement of a pilot project by the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Board and the Ministry of Tourism to recommence tourist inflows on the 28th of December, a total of 384 Ukrainian tourists arrived in the past few days. The tourists will be permitted to travel within the country in a secure travel bubble, with officials allaying fears of any exposure to the local populace. However, with following the detection of 3 tourists earlier, another 3 were detected today as well. This brings the overall number of Ukrainian tourists to have tested positive for the virus in Sri Lanka to 6. Health authorities, however, expressed confidence, saying the situation remains under control due to the experiences gained through the country's repatriation efforts.
With much controversy circulating the ideal method of disposing COVID-19 victims, the expert committees appointed by both the Minister of Health and the State Minister of Primary Health Care, Epidemics and COVID Disease Control met today at the Ministry of Health. The expert committee, headed by Professor Jennifer Pereira, had reportedly handed over their final report on suitable methods for disposal of COVID-19 deceased to the Ministry of Health yesterday. However, the two committees had been unable to come to a final conclusion with regard to the approval for burials as an alternative method to cremation. "273 buses were added by the Ministry of Transport to the fleet of the Sri Lanka Transport Board today after significant repairs in a move to prevent a shortage of buses. Adding these buses to the state transportation network worked off today under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
273 buses of the Sri Lanka Transport Board, which were taken out of service due to breakdowns, were repaired and added to the SLTB fleet today under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Golfes Green today. The decision was taken by the Ministry of Transport as a solution to the shortage of buses created in Sri Lanka following the import ban that was slapped in March this year. The buses involved were repaired at a cost of 115 million rupees. Accordingly, these buses will be used to fulfill the transportation needs of the public in the rural areas of the island. After inspecting the buses, the head of state then added a cordial chat with the workers of the Sri Lanka Transport Board. Minister of Transport Gamini Lokuge, State Minister of Bus Transport Services Dilum Amunugama, Principal Advisor to the President Lalit Veeratunga and Chairman of the SLTB Kingsley Ranawaka were also present at the occasion.
Senior lecturer in sociology at the University of Colombo, Dr. M.T.M. Mahi says, through the COVID-19 pandemic this year, the continuous battle between nature and culture has been made clear. However, he says that culture must not be forgotten and that all subcultures within the community must be given their due priority and respect.
We know that there's a continuous battle between nature and culture seen through the COVID-19 incident. What culture always proposes is kind of a social life, a harmonious life or collective life. But COVID-19 on the other hand forces us to have a totally different lifestyle, because COVID-19 and the quarantine rules and regulation always instruct us and not to be a part of the social life. We have to have a social distance, we have to get away from the social gatherings and social groupings and collective life. It's clear that COVID-19 is a kind of a battle against the culture. But we have to understand that we can't simply forget about our culture, because culture is very permanent one. Sometimes COVID-19 could be a temporary one. So how can we adjust our culture according to the present situation of COVID-19 crisis is the biggest challenge that we have in the new year. The other important aspect is that as a modern world or as a postmodern world, we have achieved a lot of material development in our social life. Everything has become powerless before COVID-19. The mankind have got a new challenge. When it comes to the Sri Lankan context, we know that COVID-19 is no exemption to Sri Lanka. We have faced huge problems in the economy as well as the culture, because unfortunately still we don't give that much of priority or respect to the subculture of the people. For example, if you take Colombo, the low income groups where people make their day-to-day livelihood, they extremely find it difficult to live. Without understanding their cultural background or social life, we can't analyze or we can't understand the real scenario of the COVID-19. The way we are facing the challenge of COVID-19 and the way they are facing challenges is different. Where we will have to face a number of issues from the side of the livelihood and the economic aspect, but unless and until we change our lifestyle, we will find it difficult to cope up with the new challenges. And giving priority for the socially marginalized groups and low income groups, then of course we can protect the system and our culture. That will be very helpful for us to go for a new era.
We'll return after this short commercial break. Bear with us. Welcome back in your business news. CEO of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Rajiv Bandaranayake, says that the market has had a record-breaking 2020, gaining over 10% with both indices recording significant progress. Further, another notable development this year was the increase in local investor interest in the market, where locals accounted for over 70% of turnover.
The stock market ended the year 2020 on a positive note, making this year record-breaking year both in terms of market performance and volumes. If you look at the performance of the market, the all-share price index year-on-year grew by over 10%, making it the first time since 2014 that we have seen a double-digit growth. The all-share price index had a growth of nearly 59% since the 12th of May, since we reopened after the COVID closure. And if you look at the S&P index, although there is a negative growth still year on year of about 10%, since 12th of May has grown by 56%. If you also look at volumes, we have seen some record-breaking volumes this year. The daily average turnover was nearly 2 billion for a day. It was something close to 1.8 billion average daily turnover during this course of this year. Even if you look at the transactions, the number of transactions, there's a five-fold increase from 2019. In 2019, we averaged 5,000 transactions a day, and during 2020, this figure grew to 25,000 transactions. In terms of volumes too, we have seen record-breaking volumes, particularly towards the end of the year, where the daily average turnover topped 2 billion for the last 3 months of the year. A significant highlight during the course of this year was the interest on the part of domestic investors, fueled by low interest rates, and we saw some of the funds domestically from local investors moving into the equity market. That resulted in a number of new investor accounts. We had over 17,000 new CDS accounts, which is about a 70% growth in the number of new accounts. There again, the local investors contributed to nearly 78% of the turnover. So we see a significant interest on the part of particularly individual investors in Sri Lanka getting into the stock market.
The all-share price index gained 26.21 points to end at 6,774.22 points, while the S&P SL20 index of the liquid stocks gained 0.25%. Further, the market turnover for today was 2.9 billion rupees. Now here's a brief report on the market performance today.
Today the market again ended in the green as the SPI gained by around 26 points, with the index closing in on 6,774 points, very closer to the 6,800 mark. So we are seeing a continuous uptrend in the market. Basically, today is the fourth consecutive day that we are seeing the market in the green. There has been a continuous bull run in the market and very short periods of profit taking, and that is mainly driven by the local buying interest. If you take the turnover levels, again today we saw high level of turnover closing in on the 3 billion mark yet again, and number of transactions were also very high, exceeding the 20,000 mark. So we are seeing buying interest coming specifically into the retail favorite Brown's investments, with the number of paper articles and also corporate disclosures that were there, and with that we are seeing significant retail buying interest continuously coming into the share.
The Sri Lankan rupee ended stronger at 185 rupees against the US dollar after closing at 187 rupees to 188 rupees and 50 cents to the US dollar yesterday. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Now, several countries ahead of Sri Lanka have already welcomed the New Year 2021. Now, let's have a look at how they celebrated the global event.
Sri Lanka may be just a few hours short of welcoming the New Year. However, in several countries across the world, the New Year has already dawned. Out of those countries that have already celebrated the New Year, Kiribati Island becomes the first. After Kiribati, New Zealand also welcomed the New Year at 4:30 p.m. Sri Lankan time, with an exceptional fireworks display worked off near the Sky Tower in Auckland. Further, Australia too welcomed the New Year at 6:30 p.m. Sri Lankan time, with fireworks near the famous Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour.
After a landslide took place in southern Norway yesterday, 10 people were injured, one of them critically, and 12 people remained unaccounted for. The landslide struck a residential area about 30 kilometers north of the capital, Oslo. Police said some 700 people had been evacuated from the area. Rescue workers continue to search the area for children and adults who were feared to have been caught in mud and debris. TV footage of the site showed a large crater with destroyed buildings at the bottom of it. 2 more houses collapsed into the crater on Wednesday afternoon, broadcaster NRK reported. Norway's King Harald said the landslide had made a deep impression on him. Masses of earth are still moving in what has been one of the largest clay slides in recent Norwegian history. Toril Hofshagen, the regional head of the Norwegian Water Resources and Energy Directorate, told a news conference. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a peaceful, prosperous and a happy New Year. Good night.